Welcome to Luke21 Radio, a broadcast explaining biblical prophecy in the tradition of St. Augustine. And now, from Greenville, South Carolina, here's your host, Steve Wood.
Hello, this is Steve Wood, and welcome to Luke21 as we study biblical prophecy together. We're continuing our study in the book of Revelation, and we're in chapter 13. And in this episode, we simply want to answer one question. Will Christians escape the Antichrist persecution, which is described in Revelation chapter 13? The last episode, I told you there is a really close connection between the book of Revelation and the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament, particularly in Revelation chapter 13. There's several connections between Daniel chapter 7. And we read in Revelation 13 and verse 5, and the beast was given a mouth. In other words, he's a really big mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words. And we go back to Daniel. It says, and the king, that there'll be a worldwide king, but this is the prophecy in Daniel, shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. And what you see here is a connection, the beast given the big mouth, and in the book of Daniel, the primary fulfillment or the original fulfillment of this, historical fulfillment in Daniel, was Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a really wicked, cruel persecutor of the Jews, and now in the book of Revelation, that type finds its final fulfillment in the Antichrist. Now, we want to ask the question, will Christians escape the Antichrist persecution? And I think the answer is self-evident, but I'll read the verses starting in Revelation chapter 13 and verse 5. And the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe, people, and tongue and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb that was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. That is, listen up. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone slays with the sword he must be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. You know, I was just reading an article this morning about some horrific persecution going on with various religious groups in China. And if they get arrested for actually teaching the faith, they can actually have their organs harvested without permission, and it's just beyond comprehension. It's this type of thing goes on against Christians in our very day, and to think of American Christians by the millions think that because we're Christians, we will escape persecution, the Antichrist persecution, and in a sense, it's already going on as I speak in China. And it's pretty self-evident that the beast is given authority, worldwide authority, and it was given permission to make war on the saints and conquer them, and they either go to jail, that's captivity, or with the sword, that means they're actually martyred. And the saints, in Revelation 13:7 and 13:10, they're Christians. The saints receive the blunt of the Antichrist persecution. It's very difficult to see how you can come up with a concoction saying Christians will not suffer persecution. They'll be raptured out of it. The book of Revelation says that. Really? It says the opposite, and it's quite explicit in this passage. For a limited time, 3.5 years, the beast, that is the Antichrist, makes war on the saints, and this is the intense persecution that culminates that war that started way back in Genesis 3:15, that continues until the end of time, and right now reaching its maximum point of intensity. And this isn't something I've just cooked up or read in a book somewhere, other than a book called The Catechism of the Catholic Church. Section 675 is an incredibly important passage in the Catechism regarding end times, particularly living in a country with so many freedoms and so many tragedies that affect so many other nations and Christians in other nations, not only now but throughout history. We have been blessed, but we really need to hear what the Catechism says, because it accurately and explicitly reverberates what I just read from Revelation 13. Before Christ's second coming, the church must pass through a final trial that will shake the faith of many believers. The persecution that accompanies her pilgrimage on earth will unveil the mystery of iniquity in the form of a religious deception, offering men an apparent solution to their problems at the price of apostasy from the truth. The supreme religious deception is that of the Antichrist, a pseudo-messianism by which man glorifies himself, that's the big mouth, in the place of God, and his Messiah come in the flesh. Before the second coming, a final trial that shakes the faith of many believers. And in a good interview, like you're interviewing an author, you say, well, why did you write this book? Because there should be some pretty deep motivation. Well, Steve, why are you doing Luke 21? It's because I read in the Catechism that the faith of many believers will be shaken, especially in America and Great Britain, where the rapture, escaping any forms of persecution and tribulation from the Antichrist, is so widespread. I'm very concerned, not to debate people about when the timeline is and these various things. I'm concerned that people are marching into the toughest period of human history and are thinking they'll simply escape. Now, there's a key word, and it's actually a phrase in English. It's a word in Greek. But in fact, I'm looking at my passage of Revelation 13, verses 5 through 10. And every time I see the words was given or it was allowed, and it's basically this exact same Greek word, except for making it nice English, they vary it back and forth. But 2 times in, verse 5, we find it was given and it was allowed. Again, 2 times in verse 7, it was allowed to make war on the saints, and authority was given to it. And the idea is, for a limited amount of time, the beast is allowed by God to have rulership of the world and persecute Christians. Now, if you've just heard what I just said, God allowed this, well, then the question should arise rather boldly in your mind, why does God allow such a thing? Why does God allow this to happen? And I'm going to give you 2 reasons. One, for a limited amount of time, and this seems to be 42 months, Revelation 3:5, or that equates to 3.5 years. For a limited time, God allows evil to have its free reign, to run its course, and to reveal itself fully before judgment comes. Judgment will come on evil when it fully reveals itself, and the judgment will be eternal punishment. But leading up to that time, it will be the darkest period of human history. So that's one reason. God allows the evil to mature to the point that when its cup is full, judgment comes and it's fully taken out of the world forever. But there's a second reason. The writer or theologian Richard Bauckham has written a book called The Climax of Prophecy, Studies in the Book of Revelation. And I don't necessarily recommend you go out and buy it because it's pretty advanced reading, but he mentions a very keen insight that in chapter 5, verse 9, chapter 7, verse 9, chapter 10, verse 11, chapter 11, verse 9, chapter 13, verse 7, chapter 14, verse 6, and chapter 17, verse 15. Now, can you give that back to me? I know you can't. That's why we have study guides. But there's a phrase mentioned 7 times in the book of Revelation, all those verses I just gave to you. And 7 times, it's a 4-fold phrase talking about every tribe, every tongue, every people, and every nation about being redeemed. Now, a lot of times, people overlook this, including yours truly. I really did overlook this. And theologian Thomas Schreiner said, here's what's going on. The saints conquer by being conquered. This is the strategy of what's going on in Revelation 13. Now, what are we called? Christians. Why? We follow Jesus. Well, who's Jesus in the book of Revelation? Who's Jesus in Revelation 13 and verse 8? He's the lamb that was slain. Now, Satan thought he was getting an advantage over Jesus by crucifying him, and actually that defeated his power, defeated death, redeemed his people. So Jesus conquered by being conquered. And the Antichrist is going to start killing Christians by the thousands and imprisoning thousands of others. Yes, Christians will not escape the Antichrist persecution. This is God's plan. It's allowed. Now, again, ask the question, why in the world would God allow that? Well, I don't know if you've been watching, but I have been watching and actually praying. It's changed my prayer life. Look at what happened to youth and young adults who are so difficult to reach in our generation. When one man is assassinated, I will call it one man martyred, Charlie Kirk trying to reach these young people, and look what's happening worldwide with young people turning to Christ. Now, just imagine this. Now, yes, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be really, really horrible. But what if the beast starts imprisoning tens of thousands of Christians and martyring thousands of others? You're talking about the largest Charlie Kirk boomerang in the history of humanity. It's going to come back around. And 7 times in the book of Revelation, and it's there, and I can remember reading it, but I never put it together. Every tribe, every tongue, every people, every nation, there's going to be a huge turning to Christ right in the midst of the worst period of human history. And, in a certain sense, well, I just care about me. I want to be raptured before all this. But no, this is the plan. This is the plan. And the plans in Revelation 13, explicit. The plans in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 675, and I urge you to read it and reread it and then reread it again. Why does God allow this? Because the beast is going to be conquered. Those he wants to lead worldwide into deception, and he'll have millions and millions of people following him, but there's also going to be a boomerang, and that's the Lamb conquers by being conquered. I'm Steve Wood, your host, and you've been listening to Biblical Prophecy with Luke 21.
Luke 21 is a radio outreach of Family Life Center International. To learn more about biblical prophecy, visit us online at luke21.com.